James Harden, the latest on the James Harden, I guess now, not sweepstakes anymore. What do you even call that?
I guess it is sweepstakes. Not for us, though. It's someone else's sweepstakes.
Yeah. So a lot of new reports. So I'm going to try to recap this as best as I can. So James Harden reportedly very upset with the way the Sixers have handled his possible free agency, and he made it known per Sam Amick. So he opted into a 1-year, $35 million contract for the upcoming season, so that the Sixers could have an easier time finding a trade partner, which is what they're apparently doing. So my question to you guys is simply, what do you make of all this? Do you think the Sixers mishandled the Harden situation, or is Harden's group trying to save face because Houston didn't want him in the end, and there really isn't a market for him in free agency? So do you think Harden is traded sooner or later? And is there a possible way the Sixers and Harden could kind of, patch things up a little bit and let the season and play out one more year together? So what do you guys think about this entire situation?
Well, if what's being said is true, I do not see him coming back this season. I think the hard part in moving him would be who you're moving him for. Are you bringing back players that are also on the 1-year deal? So I think the moving of his contract is going to be a little tougher than I think people realize because of that situation. If he doesn't return, and like I said before, I think it's all about the number of years. So I think he, in my opinion, I can see him being disappointed signing the deal that he took in a way, giving the team a favor, and then not being, taken care of now, especially with the season that he had. I can see him being upset about that. But from a Sixers standpoint, everything points to them kind of trying to lower the cap, get caps flexibility, putting certain guys or looking for something in free agency around Maxey and obviously Joel. So I just don't see them committing long term, maybe past another year. I think they might have signed James for 1 year at a max, but you probably wouldn't take him that. Like I can see them doing that. So that's why I feel like it was the years. If it's a split, the years is what caused it.
There's a big split in the Sixers fan nation about just we're not going to have a better team without him. Just give him the money. Just cave. As a fan of the Sixers, are you happy Morey kind of stood his ground and didn't just cave to his old friend James and give him the money because it is the best option and the easiest option?
Well, I mean, that's kind of hard to say because
we don't know what the offers were.
We don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what the offer is or was to James. So we don't really know if in our fan opinion, if it's fair.
Yeah.
So we don't really know that. So it's kind of hard to say. And it also is, if he is moved to another team, what are you getting back?
Yeah, I guess it's the second part of it, right?
Because that's all of that will sort of thinking back, not comparing it to the Ben Simmons situation, but comparing, thinking back to that. People were to the point where Ben was kind of understanding that Ben's eventually going to go, but it was always about, well, what are we going to get in return?
Mm-hmm.
And James came, and you got rid of 3 guys to get him. So he came here and James played well. I mean, the team just didn't go further than they did before.
As you wanted them to.
So I don't know, man. It's tough, man. But with where you are, it's almost like I guess we have to ask ourselves a question and be honest about it. If James was to sign a 1-year deal or 2-year deal and come back, do you think we would do any better than we did like this past year?
We pretty much have to run it back with the same team.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like you have to, like that's what I'm saying. We have to be honest with ourselves and ask, would we? Would we? Things go our way, we could have beaten Boston and played Miami. I mean, we had a chance to do that. We had 2 chances to do that.
Yeah. Yep.
So, you can't say we would have beaten Miami. Like, we just can't say that.
Yeah, of course not.
But we had a chance to do it, and it didn't happen. I think now the business of basketball is taking over.
Yeah.
And that's what I think it's just coming down to, the business side of basketball. You got to realize that, and I've said it before, the age. I mean, if you look at James, you look at Russ, you look at Chris.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, those guys, we know they can all still play, but now all of a sudden, when they were the number 1 options and they were younger, teams didn't have a problem signing those guys.
And the new cap rules.
Without any hesitation, and the new cap rooms don't even come into play yet. That's why years is important.
Yep.
Because going down is when those new rules really kick in, and that's why you're seeing guys just get moved, and you're like, why are they doing that? Well, some of it is the new rules.
Yeah. Which is, it's crazy because.
So when you look at Golden State, who trade. You know, I know people have been negative about Jordan Poole this year, but not last year. You know, Golden State trades their young second best scorer that's 24 years old or whatever, something like that, for Chris Paul, who's older and at the end of his career. Chris also in the last year of his deal. And you have that flexibility. And you have to sign Draymond, re-sign Draymond, and you just can't pay Draymond and Clay
And re-up Clay.
Wiggins. You just can't. They can't do it now in the new climate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess you could. You just have
but
zero flexibility.
You can, but you'll be paying more, and you won't have.
You'll be restricted,
and you won't have the ability to still go out and get players to improve your team like you did previously.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely hindering your job as a GM to go out there and field the best team possible. It's their big changes. I think they finally got it yesterday, right? The full 600 something page rule book on the new CBA, which is crazy considering they get it like 2 days before free agency or a day before free agency.
Nuts.
That's crazy, man. I think that's like unheard of.
Do they know why it took so long?
That's why the lawyers make the big bucks.
Yeah, I don't know why, to be honest with you.
The lawyers and the cap guys make
less time to finagle it.
That's their job.
Is that done on purpose, Eric? Do you know why that was given to them like a day beforehand? Is that giving them less time to kind of like try to find loopholes in it, or is it just? Well,
I mean, it's a 2 days before free agency, but it doesn't kick in until next year.
Oh, okay.
Not this free agency. So technically, they got it a year before it takes effect.
It has some impact on this. There's some changes, like the 125 to 110% rule. That changes at
but that's not that's stuff that was they already knew. So they're not reading that then figuring it out. The things that apply for this year, trust me, they already know. Yeah.
But if you're signing someone to do a 3 or 4 year deal, it will impact that new cap, right? So I mean, if you're doing a 1 year deal, then yes, it won't really
impact. But if you sign the guy to a 3 or 4 year deal, that's negotiation on his part. He's not the player, and his agent is not going to come and say, "Well, you know what? Since you guys got different restrictions, I'm going to take a 1 or 2."
Oh, they don't care.
Yeah, that's what. What difference does it make with that rule book? It doesn't apply to the player.
Yeah, that's why it's crazy for the GMs to be getting this now and be like,
but the GMs knew. I mean, I'm saying they knew enough about the restrictions that they aren't doing their job, and the lawyers and accountants and the numbers guys aren't doing their job if they're just getting this information and dissecting it now. Trust me, the league is not. They just opened it up to everybody, but it's hard for me to believe that the teams just got this information and they agreed to it with the collective bargaining agreement. So if you agree to the collective bargaining agreement and you just seeing this and talking about we didn't know it, then how did you ever agree?
Yeah. That is definitely true. Yes. Yeah. As far as the Sixer stuff go, before we go to the next topic, I think it's crazy because more than any other player and GM combo, this is such a unique thing to have with a GM and player that have such a history together. It's not a normal situation, right? It's not like any other player and GM. These guys have been together for a long time. He's the guy that made that. Morey's the guy that made that huge trade to bring him to Houston and made his name pretty much as a GM with that trade. Harden became Harden in Houston, who he eventually become. And then he brings him over again to Philadelphia. He takes that deal, the sweetheart deal, the 2-year, the 1-1, and then now this. It's crazy to see the evolution of this because of all people. And I said this to Marcus, I think a week or two ago. Whatever Morey does, especially if he decides against signing him, it really shows you how brutally honest he's being with himself about where he thinks James. I don't necessarily say where James is tomorrow or this next season. I don't think it's going to be a huge difference in play from last season, but where he thinks Harden's going to be in like 2 to 3 years from now, right? So
I'll give you two factors on what you said that changes the dynamic. One, Joel Embiid is your number one option.
Yes.
Not James Harden. Two, James Harden is not the young mid-20s that you traded for.
Yep.
So those two dynamics right there is what's different. So Morey is still Morey and James is still James, but with that situation there, it's a different dynamic. It's like you're not looking at it and saying, well, he got to have James. I mean, James in some ways is the third option.
Yeah.
So
definitely looking forward, he is for sure.
Yeah, so that's the lens that Morey has to look through.
Yep.
And I don't know if he's necessarily really making that call. That's what I'm saying. Like, he's the president, GM, and he's making the call to put the team together. But Josh Harris and crew are the ones that's making that call.
Yeah, the final stamp.
So Morey has to give them the plan and say, if he do this, then we won't be able to do that.
Yep.
If we sign him long, then we'll lose flexibility with this. Josh Harris and his crew look at it. I'd rather have this plan over here.
Yep.
I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm giving you an example of
how. Sure.
You know what I'm saying? That's how you can get to this point. And that's why I'm saying it may not always be Daryl Morey making that decision.
Yeah. But if there's anyone I trust in the situation to judge Harden, I would say him. And the fact that I think I tweeted out yesterday, I mean, in a weird, dramatic, stupid way, it's almost like someone telling their mate, like, I'm just not in love with you anymore. I'm
just saying, like, I think it's just coming down to age, years, and where he's at in years. That's just what it is.
Yeah, we have a number we're comfortable with, and that's it, I think.
Just like James has a maximum that he can get, I thought the Sixers had a maximum that they would pay.
Yep. And it's that far apart, I guess, to the point where he's like, all right, opt in and trade me. Isn't it funny too?
I don't really see, like, James is in Philly, but we all know he's a West Coast guy. He's a South guy. Being in Houston, none of us really looked at James and be like, he could be a long-time Philly guy. Like, none of us really looked at him like that. It always felt like it was a
trial.
Yeah, like a short-term thing. Like that's how
Yeah.
it always felt to me. Like it could last 3 or 4 years. I wouldn't be surprised if it only lasts 1 or 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it funny too? Like last year, it's funny with NBA. He opted out, and that meant he was staying. But this year he opted in, and that means he's gone. Like, it's just funny how that works, right? Like, that's what came out right away. He opted in. That means they're working on a trade right now. Whereas last year, when you saw the headline opted out, everyone's like, "Are you going to leave?" And I was like, no. That means he's staying. It's like, I don't know anymore. NBA, man.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll find out.
Well, regardless, I mean, Harden, helped us get out of the whole Ben Simmons situation. So he served his purpose. 1 or 2 years. It was a fun, 2 years with him, and we got out of Ben Simmons. Yeah, 240 points.
I'd still rather have to trade Harden on a 1-year deal than Simmons with 3 years left on that deal, because that's a much harder thing. They're gonna have to attach like picks to that to trade. But we also gave him picks, so
yeah,
there you go.
He's looking pretty good in the gym again.
Yeah, he's working out hard,
knocking down jumpers. He looks like he could be a pro wrestler. He's
nice physique,
looking pretty
jacked
good.
up. There you go. He'll look good in those pink outfits on the sidelines again.
Yeah.